Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well.
It's always good to meet here and share knowledge together. Today's topic is about the Gutians, a lesser-known people who played a major role in Mesopotamian history. After the fall of the Akkadian Empire, a mysterious group of mountain tribes known as the Gutians descended into Mesopotamia. They came from the Zagros Mountains to the east of Mesopotamia. The Akkadian Empire, once strong under rulers like Sargon and Naram-Sin, had begun to weaken. Climate shifts caused severe droughts, harvests were failing, and rebellions were spreading. It was in this unstable period that the Gutians found an opportunity to invade. Ancient sources describe the Gutians as fierce, semi-nomadic people with no fixed cities of their own. Unlike the Akkadians or Sumerians, they did not rely on complex irrigation systems or monumental temples. Instead, they were known for raiding, living in smaller tribal groups, and moving across regions with their herds. The Sumerians, who recorded history on clay tablets,
Often painted the Gutians as destructive outsiders.
in the Sumerian king list, they are described as kings who ruled without order, suggesting that their reign was seen as chaotic. One king in particular, Naram-Sin, the grandson of Sargon, tried to resist them, but after his death, the Akkadian hold collapsed rapidly. This allowed the Gutians to establish dominance over much of Mesopotamia. However, it is important to note that most of what we know about the Gutians
Comes from their enemies.
the Sumerians and later Babylonians had a tendency to exaggerate the cruelty or disorder of invading groups. So while the Gutians were indeed conquerors, some of their negative reputation might have been shaped by political propaganda. Before we move to our today, I want to say that this channel is user-friendly, no offensive content.
No misinformation.
We explain things with respect, curiosity, and authenticity. The Gutian period did not last long, but its impact was unforgettable. It marked a time of hardship in Mesopotamia, with failing agriculture, weakened cities, and decline in written administration.
Still, the Gutian presence
Set the stage for the eventual revival of Sumerian power when rulers of later restored order. The Gutian domination over Mesopotamia was marked by disorder and decline. Unlike the structured governance of the Akkadian Empire, the Gutians lacked experience.
in managing a complex state.
They were skilled warriors, but their nomadic traditions did not provide them with the administrative knowledge needed to run great cities like Akkad, or Nippur. Ancient records, such as the Sumerian king list, describe the Gutian kings as rulers who brought hardship.
And disruption.
Harvests declined, trade routes weakened, and city defenses faltered. One Sumerian lament poem claims the Gutians did not know the proper worship of gods, nor how to care for the land, which reflected how their unfamiliar ways clashed with Mesopotamian expectations. Yet historians today analyze these accounts with caution. Many of these texts were written by later Sumerians, who had an interest in portraying Gutians negatively
As invaders responsible.
for misfortune. Still, archaeology suggests,
A genuine decline took place.
for example, administrative records from temple archives show fewer entries during Gutian times, indicating reduced activity. Also, urban centers shrank and large-scale construction projects nearly disappeared. This period has sometimes been called a dark age of Mesopotamia, though modern scholars
Remind us it was not
complete collapse, but rather a weakening.
of centralized power.
Interestingly, the Gutians may have ruled in smaller fragmented groups,
Rather than one strong dynasty. Evidence hints
that their control varied from city to city, sometimes heavy, sometimes loose. Despite difficulties, life did not stop completely.
local city-states.
Still operated in limited ways.
Merchants continued
some regional trade, and farmers grew crops in river valleys. What changed most was the absence of large-scale unity and direction that Sargon and his successors
had once enforced.
This lack of unity made the Gutians
vulnerable to resistance.
Cities like Uruk and began to reassert themselves, testing Gutian strength. Eventually, a strong Sumerian leader would rise to challenge them, setting the stage for the Gutians' downfall. The turning point came when Sumerian city-states started resisting Gutian authority. After decades of instability,
leaders in cities like Uruk, and Lagash
began forming strategies to reclaim independence. The Gutians, though fierce in battle,
struggled to maintain control
over such a vast and urbanized land. Their style of rule
often relied on intimidation rather than organized governance.
This weakness gave ambitious Sumerian rulers an opportunity.
One of the most famous figures
in this resistance was Utu-Hengel, the governor of Uruk. According to inscriptions, Utu-Hengel rallied the Sumerian cities and launched a campaign to drive out the Gutians. A key inscription, often called the Victory Stele of Utu-Hengel, describes how he defeated the last Gutian king, Tirigan. The story tells us that Tirigan fled with his troops, but local people captured him and handed him over to Utu-Hengel, ending Gutian dominance. This victory was not just military. It symbolized the revival
of Sumerian pride
and cultural restoration. Temples were repaired, trade routes reopened, and city life began to flourish again. The Gutians,
once feared invaders,
faded into history. Their rule had lasted roughly a century, though the exact timeline remains debated among scholars. What is clear is that the Gutians could not sustain empire-level power in Mesopotamia. Their downfall paved the way for a new golden age of Sumerian civilization. Utu-Hengel's reign, though relatively short, set the stage for the rise of an even greater dynasty, the third dynasty of commonly known as the Ur-3 period. This upcoming era would attempt to rebuild what had been lost since the fall of Akkad. It would bring
new legal codes,
large building projects,
and stronger administration.
But before that, the memory of Gutian rule remained a cautionary tale in Mesopotamian history. Sumerian scribes
often recalled it
as a time of chaos, against which later kings contrasted their achievements. The cycle of rise and fall was again visible. A powerful empire collapsed, a foreign group ruled briefly,
and the native cities
eventually reclaimed their strength. This rhythm of history would repeat many times in Mesopotamia's story. As the Gutian presence extended into Mesopotamia, their rule began shaping political structures that would set the stage for later developments in history. Unlike the Akkadian kings, who cultivated strong administrative systems, the Gutians lacked a centralized approach. Their governance relied heavily on tribal organization, with leaders chosen from within their clans. This made their rule appear less stable, since no permanent capital or long-term dynasty emerged. Yet the Gutians did influence Mesopotamian culture. Evidence from later Sumerian texts suggests that they controlled trade routes for a time, moving goods between mountain and plain. They also brought with them distinctive weapon styles, curved daggers and battle axes, which were different from the Akkadian bronze swords. Despite this, many Mesopotamian scribes portrayed the Gutians negatively. Clay tablets from cities like and Nippur described them as people without kingship and accused them of disrupting temple traditions. This perspective, however, may reflect the bitterness of settled populations losing their old order rather than a full picture of Gutian life. Archaeological traces also suggest that Gutian interaction was not purely destructive. Some city walls were rebuilt during their era, and farming in certain valleys continued. Their pastoral economy meant they valued access to fertile plains, and so keeping farmland active was essential. Ultimately, the Gutian dynasty did not last long. By around 2100 BC, the Sumerian ruler Utu-Hegal of Uruk organized a coalition against them. His inscriptions proudly record the victory that drove the Gutians back to the mountains. This event ended Gutian dominance and reopened the path for the Neo-Sumerian revival,
often called the Ur-3 period.
This short but fascinating chapter reminds us that history is not only written by conquerors, it is also shaped by tribes, wanderers, and peoples whose memory survives, mostly through the words of their rivals. All the information we provide comes from verified historical sources, including books, records, and archaeology. For deeper study, sources include The Sumerians, Their History, Culture, and Character by Samuel Noah Kramer, History of Ancient Mesopotamia by Georges Roux, Translations of Sumerian king lists and Akkadian inscription,
Archaeological surveys from Mesopotamian highland regions.
Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Thrones of Knowledge. And don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified on time. Suggest our next topic in the comments.
To help make our journey even better,